Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your co-host, Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC Fight Island, Deiveson Figueiredo versus Joseph Benavidez. And Shaq, it's going down this Saturday night. Deiveson Figueiredo gets to rematch Joseph Benavidez for the vacant flyweight title. And someone's going to walk home the undisputed flyweight champion.
Yeah, anytime these two guys step into the cage, I mean, it's usually chaos, especially with Figueiredo. I mean, this guy's got a chin of steel. They don't call him God of War for no reason. I mean, he goes out there to really hunt guys down and get the finish. And Benavidez as well has got a lot of finishes, one of the best, lighter weight class fighters to do it, for the past decade or so. He's been in the top 5 his whole career. So he's getting another title opportunity. Let's see if he can do it. A tough task with Figueiredo, but we'll see what happens.
Deiveson is bar none the hardest hitter in the flyweight division. And Joseph Benavidez is a legend of the sport. I mean, he's a guy we grew up watching in the WEC. He was the first fighter to ever compete at flyweight in the UFC, first man to ever score a knockout in the flyweight division. Now he's trying to be a champion. He's going to have a very tall order here Saturday night. I cannot wait for that fight. Make sure y'all go to bestfightpicks.com to check out our plays. And Shaq, let's get right down to business, because first up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Serghei Spivak, he's 10-2, and Carlos Felipe is 8-0. Currently, they got Serghei Spivak minus 160. The comeback on Carlos Felipe is plus 140. So, I mean, obviously we know the deal with Serghei Spivak. I mean, he was known for those schoolyard headlocks on the regional scene. In the UFC, it hasn't quite been the prettiest. But for Carlos Felipe, this is a guy that got signed to the UFC in 2017. Unfortunately, he popped, so he's been suspended by USADA this entire time. Now he's making his return. I mean, I know he took a boxing match in 2018, but from what I've seen from this guy, he'll come out and he'll bomb on you early. I'm kind of curious what happens if it goes down the stretch or what his ground credentials are, but man, I have a feeling he might come out here and bomb on Spivak and clip him. So actually, I'm going to go with the Brazilian here.
Yeah, this fight's interesting. This fight kind of reminds me of the Dontel Mays fight and the Nascimento fight, that big Brazilian heavyweight. One side really doesn't have much, tape on him, Brazilian guy. But against a guy that we know, let's just be honest here, Spivak, we know it's never going to pan out. So, I think it's a good spot for Felipe to possibly get an upset here. Spivak, he had the nice one over Tuivasa in there, man. He just kind of, he looked slow, kept getting taken down. And I'm interested to see if Spivak can hit the takedowns against this guy, but I'll go with Carlos Felipe. I'll say by first round knockout.
And next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Davi Ramos, he's 10-3, and Arman Tsarukyan is 14-2. Currently, they got Arman Tsarukyan minus 200. The comeback on Davi Ramos is plus 170. Shaq, on paper, it's a jiu-jitsu ace versus a stud wrestler. Should be one hell of a fight. You think it stays standing most of the time, or you think these guys are going to go ahead and try to find out who's the superior grappler?
Yeah, man, that's a good question, because Tsarukyan, he's a super young kid, man. I forgot how young he was. He's only like 24 now, I believe, or 25. So, and he's already got a win like OAM, fought Islam very tough. Arman Tsarukyan fought very good with Islam Makhachev, and Ramos also fought Islam, in which he got beat up pretty badly. It's a good matchup because Arman, I feel like he's still developing. He's got a lot more room to improve, a lot more. So, with all this time off, he's probably going to look a lot better. Ramos, probably done improving, but he's a solid guy. Big bombs on the feet, black belts, got some good wins as well. It's just as far as winning a decision in Abu Dhabi, I feel like the odds are against him in this spot against Tsarukyan. I feel like he's gonna really have to hurt Tsarukyan and somewhat dominate this fight to win. And I don't think that's gonna happen. So I'm probably gonna go with Tsarukyan. I think it's gonna be a tough fight though, because I'm not sure if Tsarukyan's skills are quite there yet. I mean, his stand up is very stiff. He can't really box. He's got some like a good volume of kicks though. It should be improving. So, but I see it being a closely matched fight. But I'm gonna say Arman probably outworks him to a decision.
Yeah, look, both these guys are badass. I mean, obviously, you remember when we cashed that max bet on Davi Ramos against Chris Gritzmacher. This guy's got some of the nastiest jiu-jitsu in the UFC against Nick Hine. That Kimura to the back take was absolutely disgusting. And, I mean, he can throw big bombs on the feet. Man, I was kind of alarmed by that last fight against Islam Makhachev. Like, I get it. I know Makhachev is a badass, but, like, 7 strikes landed in 15 minutes. Like, that was not good, man. That was a very alarming performance by Davi. Now, granted, he's already had that experience fighting in Abu Dhabi. And, I mean, he won medals in jiu-jitsu in Abu Dhabi. So he's got experience there, man. So he's coming back now. The thing with this fight with Arman, I agree with you. It is going to be kind of close. I just feel like Arman is kind of going to be the one who's, dictating the center of the cage. He's going to, push him up against the fence and have those relentless takedown attempts. And, yeah, Davi could catch him with a guillotine or something like that. Or he could, throw some big bombs, but I feel like Arman Tsarukyan is going to kind of be dictating the tempo and controlling where this fight goes. So for that reason, I'm going to take the very young Arman Tsarukyan to get it done. Now, real quick, in the flyweight division, let's just give a quick pick between Malcolm Gordon and Amir Albazi. Who you got? You got the Canadian or you got the Swedish guy?
I'll take the Swede Albini on this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Prince Amir Albazi as well.
Or Albazi.
What
Albazi, man.
What I heard from Malcolm X Gordon is that back in the day he got laid out a couple times. His chin ain't the best, but the kid can scramble, so it should be a very exciting fight. And all I know about Amir is that he's been solid. His only loss is to one of the best flyweights outside the UFC, which is Jose Shorty Torres. So not bad. We'll see what these kids got. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Brett the Pikey Johns. He's 16-2, and Montel Quick Jackson is 9-1. Currently, they got Montel Jackson minus 210. The comeback on Brett Johns is plus 175. Shaq, this is one of the best fights on the entire card. Serious bantamweight prospect showdown. And, man, 2 guys we're high on. How you see it going down?
This is a great fight because Brett Johns, he's a tough customer, man. And Montel Jackson, a lot of people since we saw him on Contender Series have been saying, making comparisons to John Jones and Sterling, et cetera. So I'm excited. This is his big test because Johns, I would consider him like a top, 20 guy, somewhere in that range, top 25 for sure. So we're really going to see what Montel's made of this time. I feel like Montel, it's one of those things where, yeah, I understand there's been some action coming in on Brett Johns this week. They're taking shots because, I mean, Brett Johns is a good fighter and you got a good line. So I definitely understand that angle. It's just, man, I feel like he's in an uphill battle in this fight, man. I could see him having some success early if Montel is somewhat a little hesitant, right out the gates. This is a big fight, and sometimes he is a little bit hesitant to let his hands go. But once he finds his range, and another thing is Brett Johns kind of has a tendency to run himself into the ground sometimes, man. In every single fight, even the ones that he wins, there's times where he shelves up and he gives up his back and, he almost gets choked out or takes an unnecessary amount of punches, but he'll get away with that because he's a tough guy. But I feel like if he does that against Montel Jackson, the damage that he's going to sustain is going to be too much to come back from, man. I mean, you look at that last fight against Alvarez. I mean, that was getting kind of scary, but I understand that Montel hasn't fought beaten anyone at this level, but man, he beat Kelleher in a round for his first UFC win, and I still think the kid. I do think the kid has top 15 potential, so I think he's gonna tough this one out. I think it's gonna go 15 minutes. I think it's gonna be a tough fight, but I think that the last 2 rounds, especially, is when you're gonna see Montel take over this fight.
Shaq, you know what this fight reminds me of? It reminds me of John Jones versus Ryan Bader. I mean, both guys were the prospects having their little showdown back in the day before Jones was champion. And it was one of those situations where, Ryan was the stud wrestler, but then Jones goes out there and takes him down right away to prove a point. And I kind of see this one being, the same kind of ordeal. Everyone's saying that Montel Jackson has to keep this standing. And while I do think he's got a big edge on the feet, I mean, you and I both know Montel is that cocky. Montel is that competitive. Montel wants to prove he can beat you at your own game. Montel's going to come out here and take down Brett Johns just to prove a point, and they're going to have some interesting scrambles. But when it gets back up on the feet, and you already know the deal, when Brett Johns starts getting a little tired, he starts doing this thing where he starts shelling up, he starts covering up, and then he eats a bunch of unnecessary punches. You remember those 20-punch combos Montel's been getting off on his last few fights. So I'm telling you right now, if Brett Johns does that little cover-up thing against Montel, he might get knocked out. But the bottom line is that, look, Montel can simply do things that other men can't. I mean, that UFC debut on 6 days short notice, he was in the worst spot you can be in an MMA fight. Face down, ass up, fully back mounted. And, all Ricky Simon had to do was just pound him out. The fight's going to be over shortly after. But Montel uses his long limbs to trap the wrists of Ricky Simon, and Ricky couldn't get off on any damage whatsoever. It was truly amazing. And now with full camps, you've seen the kind of performances he's been putting on. I mean, people will criticize his cardio. In that last fight against Felipe Colares, he unloads the clip trying to get the guy out of there in the first round. You could see he was kind of tired, still comes out that second and third and continues the domination. So I think this kid is something special. Look, I like Brett Johns. Brett Johns is a fantastic fighter. Brett Johns came through for me at Dog Money against Tony Gravely. I like the kid a lot. It's just that he's fighting Montel Jackson here, so that's kind of the issue. Look, I'm going with the guy I said is the future champion of the bantamweight division. I'm going Montel Jackson to get this one done. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Joel Alvarez. He's 16-2, and Irish Joe Duffy is 16-4. Currently, they got Joe Duffy minus 345. The comeback on Joel Alvarez is plus 285. Well, Shaq, we got the guy that beat Conor McGregor versus the best fighter from Spain in lightweight history. How you see this one going down?
Yeah, this is an interesting fight. Duffy's been off for a while. We know the deal with Duffy, man. He didn't live up to expectations, and now he fights, once a year, once every 18 months, you know the deal. Now Alvarez is a developing fighter, that we know that his wrestling, is pretty garbage. We know, but we know that he's a tough kid. We know that he ain't gonna quit. We know he's got some good jiu-jitsu as well off his back. Joe Duffy definitely should be the favorite, deserves to be the favorite, and more than likely will win the fight. It's just like, Dan, who is Joe Duffy really beating?
Mitch Clark.
Is that it? What's Joe Duffy's best win?
Besides Conor McGregor, Reza Madadi.
So I mean, like, Joe Duffy really ain't done shit in every big fight that he's had. He's gotten absolutely dominated, and for the most part, he got dominated against Dustin, Vic, and Marc. So I wouldn't be shocked if Joel Alvarez came out here and maybe lost the first 2 rounds on 2 cards and was able to get the 3rd round finish. I feel like he's got one of those type of spirits, but at the same time, if Joe just shoots at his legs, he's probably going to get the takedown. But I think it's a dog or pass situation. Joe Duffy, he's been off for a while. He hasn't beaten anybody. I mean, it's kind of like it's like one of those things where, yeah, he's got the name, but like he hasn't really done shit,
Look, this fight kind of reminds me of like Marlon Vera versus Brad Pickett. Back then, Marlon Vera was the green guy who, needed so much work. It's not the Marlon Vera we look at today. And, I mean, look, I see Joel Alvarez in kind of the same light. He's still early on in his UFC career. He still has a lot of work. He comes from a scene in Spain where they don't have any good fighters. They don't have good training. So, literally, this guy's like a pioneer over there. You know what I mean? And, look, the guy went, 15-1 outside the UFC, and you look at those 15 guys he beat, and then you compare him to Damir Ismagulov, who he fought in his UFC debut, and that's such a massive step up in competition. And if Joel Alvarez was really as trash as everyone says he is, he would have got finished in the first round by Damir Ismagulov. Now, granted, I know he got schooled, but the fact that he got that experience behind him, I mean, he comes out his next fight, and I thought he won all the stand-up exchanges. I wish his takedown defense was better. Obviously, he's got no wrestling whatsoever, but look, won all the stand-up exchanges, and when it got on the mat, he attacked for triangles. He swept the guy. It was a beautiful sweep. Trapped his wrist behind his back and pounded him out. I was like, damn, that was nice. If on this year off or in this year off, if he can just level up a little bit more to catch up with a declining Joe Duffy, I mean, he might be able to come out here and get this upset. It's just that it's going to be one of those situations where Duffy's probably going to be winning the majority of the fight. You know, he's going to get takedowns. I mean, look, Joe Duffy's better across the board in terms of the skill set. He's just not better in the mental aspect. You know, I think this kid Alvarez wants it more than Joe Duffy. So it's about, can Joe Duffy use his technique to bail him out and avoid any tough situations? Because I'll tell you this, if this kid lands a big knee to the chin on Joe Duffy, if this kid lands a head kick, if this kid sweeps Joe Duffy, I can see him going ahead and finishing this fight. So I think it is a dog or pass situation. I mean, I get why Joe Duffy's favored. He's the better guy. But, man, I think Joel Alvarez is the tougher guy. And if he's leveled up at all in this time off, might be live for an upset. So I'm going to actually take the dog here. We'll see what happens. Now, next up, we got an 150-pound catchweight as Grant Dawson, who's 15-1, takes on Nad Narimani, who's 12-3. Currently, they got Grant Dawson minus 255. The comeback on Nad Narimani is plus 215. Shaq, a lot of people are saying Nad Narimani is a live underdog here. Do you agree?
Man, it's a good matchup. Nad's a tough kid. You know, he got knocked out his last fight. He was actually doing pretty good in that fight against Rock Grundy, before he got finished. And Dawson, man, I like Dawson. I'm not sure if I'd say he's like a future champion or like a future, top 10 guy, but I definitely think he can, maybe hit the rankings one day. I think he's got a lot of potential. His stand-up seems to be getting better. We know the deal with the takedowns. He can chain off a bunch of them over and over. He's got a good camp with Krause and them. So I like Grant Dawson, but Nad, just how they match up, I feel like Nad, he has to land a big bomb to win this fight, because I just feel like Dawson's work rate is just too much. And Nad's a tough guy who can work as well. But when you look at his UFC career, he fought 2 bantamweights, Anderson Dos Santos, who, is barely UFC level, and Khalid Taha, who was at bantamweight as well. So, he's still kind of unproven if he can take out a real featherweight in the UFC. He is a tough guy. But I just see Dawson being a step ahead. I feel like as long as he doesn't come out here with a plan to box, which, he never does, I feel like his work rate with the takedowns and in the clinch is just going to be a little bit too much for Nad, slow Nad down. And when Nad slows down, he gets really sloppy. That's when he starts leaving his chin in the air. And I feel like Dawson's going to more than likely come out here and get the win.
Yeah, this is a situation where I feel like the early going is going to be very competitive. It's going to be back and forth. Nad Narimani might even get some takedowns of his own. He's a very solid guy. But I feel like the later this fight goes, down the stretch, that's kind of where Grant Dawson can take over. And, Grant Dawson, I like his cardio. I like that he knows exactly where his strengths lie. He's going to be relentless with the takedown attempts. So at least he's not going to come out here and, try to kickbox or anything like that. And, I do agree that, I don't really consider him to be a future top 15 guy, and I could be way off, but I still think he's solid, man. I think he's a decent prospect, and Nad Narimani is very, very solid as well. I see this being a fun back-and-forth fight with Grant Dawson slightly edging it. Now, next up in the light heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Khadis Ibragimov, he's 8-2, and Roman Dolidze is 6-0. Currently, they got Roman Dolidze minus 170. The comeback on Khadis Ibragimov is plus 150. Well, Shaq, the deal with this guy, Roman Dolidze, is he hasn't fought since 2018 because he popped, similar to this other guy we were talking about. So he's been out with a USADA suspension. And I don't know if you saw some of his regional footage, but let's just say I'm not surprised that this guy popped, with USADA. So now coming back, this is the first time he competes unjuiced. We'll see what he looks like. It's an interesting matchup because, look, Khadis Ibragimov, the big issue has been that he comes out super hard, doesn't pace himself, and then he gasses out, and his opponents are able to kind of take over. And, man, this might be the first time in his UFC career where he actually has the experience edge in a spot. And I feel like, look, Khadis, how old is my boy Khadis? Let me look it up real quick. So Khadis, he's only 25 years old. So I feel like he just needs to make a slight adjustment. If he can come out here and just pace himself a little bit better, then I actually think he can come out here and win this fight. It's just, can you trust Khadis to do that, because based on his history, he hasn't done that so far. But at the same time, you could also look at it like, hey, he was in there with Ed Herman. Maybe he thought it was this big joke. Maybe he thought, hey, I'm just going to go out there, get rid of Ed Herman real quick, and we'll be on our way. And when that didn't happen, you know, a guy in Ed Herman who's won 13 times inside the UFC was able to show him some vet tricks. The thing is that Roman Dolidze is only 6-0, so he's not going to come out here with the kind of experience that Da Un Jung or Ed Herman have. And I get why Dolidze is favored. You know, on his regional footage, it was one of those things where, like, he kind of taunts the guys he's in there with. He kind of talks a lot, but then he'd randomly knock them the fuck out, like out stiff, out cold. But, like, up until the KOs, it really wasn't that impressive. So, man, if I knew for a fact that Khadis was actually going to pace himself this time, if I knew for a fact that Khadis learned from his mistakes, I might actually bet him here, but I don't know that. But I'm still going to pick him, you know, reluctantly. But, like, I feel like, dude, all you got to do is just pace yourself, and you can come out here and you can win this fight. I might be way off. Maybe Roman is this great talent, but I didn't really see it on tape, man. So we'll see what happens. But I'm going to lean with the more experienced Khadis Ibragimov here.
Yeah, man, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think Ibragimov, look, when you think about it, he's been in there with Da Un Jung, who's one of the top prospects at 205. He's been in there with Short Fuse, who's got, you know, been in the UFC for, you know, pretty much my whole life, damn near. And then you got, so I just think the kid was kind of way in over his head, just fighting in fights that he had no business being in. I feel like now this is, you know, a little bit more durable. A little bit more of a, you know, this guy, like you said, 6-0, not that much experience. He's been in there twice. So, man, I'm going to take Ibragimov as well. He's got a lot of power. He's got, you know, like some big punches. He just, like you said, needs to pace himself. Maybe these 2 embarrassing losses is what does it for him. These are kind of like, you know, usually some decent spots. Sometimes after these L's, they come back a little bit more rejuvenated. So, and his back's against the wall. So let's see if Khadis wants to stay in the UFC.
Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Alexandre Pantoja. He's 22-4, and Askar Askarov is 11-0-1. Currently, they got Alexandre Pantoja -200. The comeback on Askar Askarov is +170. Shaq, this is one hell of a matchup in the flyweight division. Obviously, you already know about the cannibal, Alexandre Pantoja, one of the most badass guys at flyweight, and he's a longtime veteran of the sport. I mean, this is a guy that was fighting Formiga 10 years ago. Now he's doing his thing in the UFC. And, you know, his only losses in the octagon, I mean, the Dustin Ortiz fight could have gone either way, but basically that was one of those situations where, hey, if you go out here and you stall out a guy like Pantoja, that's one way to beat him. The other way to beat him is the way Deiveson beat him, which is if you happen to be the hardest hitter at 125, you know, like, Pantoja did nothing wrong in that Deiveson fight. Pantoja fought like Pantoja. Pantoja walked down Deiveson. It's just that the impact of Davison's shots are something else, man. And I don't think that Askar Askarov hits anywhere near as hard as that. And when you think about Askar Askarov's fights on the regional scene, he was more so known for, you know, getting these subs off his back, and he's really good at scrambling and stuff like that. And I just kind of find it difficult to see him going out there and submitting a guy like Pantoja. So I feel like for him to win this fight, he's kind of got to go out there, stall it out, you know, ride that back position, kind of like Dustin Ortiz did. And I really don't think that Askar Askarov is that level wrestler. So I actually think this is kind of a tough matchup for Askar Askarov. And I like Askarov a lot. Look, he had a great fight with Brandon Moreno. Between you and me, he knocked out Tim Elliott in the first round, but credit to Tim Elliott's conditioning. He was able to recover midair and go the 3 rounds. But I like this kid a lot. And Pantoja, you already know the deal. He's a true badass, man. So I'm going to go with Pantoja here, man. I feel like he's got the edge in almost every area, and he should be able to prove why he's the more dominant fighter here.
Yeah, Pantoja, you know, I feel like this is kind of similar to his last fight, like against Schnell. It's just a different level of flyweights. You know, Pantoja's in that first tier, in my opinion, you know, a top 3 guy. I mean, just look what he did. Look what he's done to Moreno twice, you know. Moreno's the guy that they want to get the next title shot. And, I mean, the last time Pantoja, I know it's a different Moreno now, and I want to see the 3rd fight, but Pantoja's beaten, man, he beat Moreno twice, Kai Kara, he beat Schnell, he beat Wilson Hayes, like, man, the guy has definitely separated himself from a lot of the other featherweights. Askarov, a very tough guy, young in his UFC career, and I think he has a bright future ahead of him. It's just that you see moments where a guy like Pantoja, like in that Elliott fight, he gets off to the good start, almost knocks him out. But in that second round, you kind of saw Elliott come out there and Elliott didn't win the round, but you could just see moments where, a better guy could pressure Askarov after he's a little tired. He doesn't have the power in his hands in comparison to Pantoja or in his kicks. He's more of a point scrambler, like kind of, like you said, he's going to look to stall right out the position. And that has been a way guys have beaten Pantoja in the past. I know he lost on Tough to that Japanese guy that way, and I know he lost to Ortiz that way. So, maybe it is a possibility, but I really see Pantoja hurting him with the strikes after some scrambles, after they work back up to the feet. I feel like that's where Askarov's is most vulnerable, and I feel like Pantoja will take advantage of it and probably get a knockout here. So I'm going to go with Pantoja.
Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Ariane Lipski, the queen of violence, Shaq. She's 12-5, and Luana Carolina is 6-1. Currently, they got Ariane Lipski minus 120. The comeback on Luana Carolina is plus 100. This is an interesting matchup, man, because with Ariane Lipski, the kind of hype she had coming into the UFC was unlike anything I've ever seen before, man. I mean, people thought she was just going to come out here, knock out Joanne Calderwood, get a title shot, all this stuff, and things didn't go according to plan. I mean, people are so passionate about Ariane Lipski. I remember when we picked Molly McCann at plus 245 odds against Lipski, and the kind of comments we got about that, it was almost like, like we murdered someone's family member. You know what I mean? People got mad about that shit. But this is an interesting fight because Luana Carolina is a lot less experienced than the two people that Lipski lost to in the UFC. But stylistically, it's really interesting because I feel like Ariane Lipski probably hits harder than Carolina, but Carolina's got a little bit more volume. Carolina also leaves that chin in the air, which could cause a knockout by Lipski. So Lipski's live for a knockout here. It's just that down the stretch, I feel like the volume of Luana Carolina can kind of dictate how this fight goes. It's just about that early going because, like, one thing about Lipski is she hits hard for that division standard. She's got a lot of knockdowns. She knocked down her last opponent. She knocked down some people on that KSW scene. And even though she got completely dominated by, Joanne Calderwood and Molly McCann, I feel like that's a different level than Luana Carolina. You know what I mean? Like, when you compare, Luana Carolina, the best person she's ever been in there with is Priscilla Cachoeira. Like, at least Ariane Lipski went 3 rounds with the number 3 fighter on planet Earth and Joanne. And while she got schooled, she got broken, she got embarrassed, no doubt about it. Number 3 in the world is unlike anything that Luana Carolina's ever seen. So you got to give the experience edge to Lipski for sure. But the toughness, I would give to Luana Carolina. I feel like she does better in a back-and-forth fight. It's just about the early going. That's where I'm most concerned because, like I said, Luana keeps that chin in the air. Lipski can crack. So Lipski's definitely live for an early knockout here. But the longer this fight goes, I think the volume's going to add up, and I think that Luana can possibly edge out a decision here.
Yeah, Lipski is one of those fighters, a lot of power for like you said, for that weight class. But man, I still feel like if you make her think, make her have to use her brain in there, make her really uncomfortable, that I still feel like she'll fade. I mean, I still feel like that aspect is still untested. Granted, she's 1 year in the company. She got 1 win. Maybe she's a little comfortable now. Maybe she, will showcase more of her skills with, that weight off her shoulders after the first win. But even in that fight, she almost knocked that girl out, but then, like, gives up these big takedowns and she's on her back for extended periods of time. So I feel like the ground game is still a work in progress. And on the feet, yeah, she's got this big power, but a lot of female fights just don't end in knockout that much, man. So, that's what coming over I was kind of skeptical about is like, I know you can beat Diana Belbita and, all these other chicks, but like, the UFC, are you going to get these knockouts? They don't really happen that much in the 125 division. But I think that Lipski's got the power edge. Carolina, like you said, leaves the chin up in the air. But I wouldn't be shocked if Coach Lucas Monero Martins came out here and said, let's work these takedowns a little bit. Let's put this girl on her back because, bro, every time she gets on her back, she like it's like one of those things where she has like no answer. So I wouldn't be shocked if they tried to exploit that. On the feet, it's going to be a 50-50 battle. I think Lipski's stand-up's a little overrated, but I feel like at times she can be a little robot in there, real stiff, slow. And I do feel like the teeps, the left high kick, in the second and third rounds, it could definitely play a big factor. I feel like it's a 50-50 fight, so I'll take the dog as well. I'll go with Carolina. Lipski, maybe she gets this one. I wouldn't. From a betting perspective, I would say it's like one of those give or take either side's. Like, I think it's lined appropriately.
Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Marc Diakiese, he's 14-3, and Rafael Fiziev is 7-1. Currently, they got Marc Diakiese minus 155. The comeback on Rafael Fiziev is plus 135. Well, Shaq, this is an interesting fight because, look, Marc Diakiese, he's definitely paid his dues. He got signed to the UFC when he was like 22, and now he's like 26, so he's definitely matured a lot. And, he got thrown in the ringer there, man. He had to fight guys like Dan Hooker and Drakkar Klose and Nasrat Haqparast. So it's understandable why he took those setbacks, but I feel like he came back better from them, man. That performance against Joe Duffy and Lando Venata, I feel like now he's starting to mature a little bit. You're starting to see the full game. And you've always seen glimpses. He's very flashy on the feet. He hits extremely hard. Now you're seeing the calf kicks being mixed in. And also his wrestling game offensively, I like the fact that, back in the day, we always talked about that fight that was 1-1 going into the third round. He mixes in the takedowns to edge it out. So I like those kind of things. The fight IQ's on point.
You're talking about against Frankie Perez.
Yeah, exactly, man. He knew what to do back when he was 23. Now that he's 26, has all that experience behind him, you like to see it. And with Fiziev, man, the dude can kickbox. The dude can go out there and kickbox for sure. He's been very, very impressive on the feet. I know he got caught in his debut, but that spin kick to the face will knock out anyone. So it's one of those situations where Marc wants to come out here and have a technical kickboxing match with Fiziev. Fiziev's definitely live for an upset, but if Marc can kind of out-MMA him and, when Fiziev thinks that Marc's going to, shoot for a takedown, that's when Marc can get off on some strikes. And when Fiziev thinks that Marc's going to strike, that's when, Marc Diakiese's got to, change levels and go for an entry, get a takedown. So Marc's got to keep him guessing this whole time. If he can do that, I think he's going to go out there and win. He just has to be careful because, like I said, Fiziev can kickbox for real. So don't come out here and try to test out your improved kickboxing against this guy. And if he doesn't do that, if he doesn't fight with his ego, comes out here, uses the whole MMA arsenal, I think Diakiese should win this one.
Yeah, that's very important. Like you said, I feel like that's a big key for Marc to win this fight is just, let's make this as MMA as possible, as wrestling clinch as possible, because Fiziev is one of these guys where he's got a lot of power in those low kicks. And we have seen Diakiese at times struggle with guys that, kick his legs, like Drakkar Klose. His leg gave out in that fight. Hooker was bothering him with the calf kicks, in the jab. But those guys aren't a different level as Fiziev. It's just that Fiziev does have some good, speed, power, and he looked really good his last fight against Alex White, man. But this is a big step up. Diakiese, like you said, look at the names he's already been in there with. Ever since he moved back to England, man, I feel like, saying he went back to England, things have just been looking real good for him. He just seems a lot more positive. And I'm glad the UFC didn't cut him after that fight against Haqparast, because I know a lot of people thought that they were going to cut him after that fight and that was going to be it for Marc. So I'm glad to see him doing well. But yeah, I lean Marc, but I respect Fiziev to enough to not play Marc. I feel like it's going to be a tough fight. Both men are going to take a lot of blows. And Fiziev, man, he's got that good camp. He's training with Peter Yan and them, and a lot of those Kazakhstani Russians. So I feel like he's going to be improved as well. But I'll take Marc by split decision. I think it's going to be a tough fight.
Co-main event of the evening in the middleweight division, we got a showdown between Jack the Joker Hermansson. He's 20-5, and Kelvin Gastelum is 16-5. Currently, they got Kelvin Gastelum minus 115 and Jack Hermanson is minus 105. So, I mean, Shaq, it's a pick 'em, and this is one hell of a matchup. I mean, I kind of view it as striker versus grappler, even though both guys are super well-rounded. I think that Kelvin wants to keep this standing and put those hands on Jack, and Jack wants to get on top of Kelvin and unleash the greatest ground and pound on planet Earth. So, which way are you leaning on this one?
Man, this is a good one. This is a good one because I'm a big fan of both guys. I've had my moments with both guys. Jack Hermanson. I mean, this guy. I love Jack. I love the Joker. You remember that bet he won us on against Talis Slatus back in the day. With the broken rib. He had some good wins, man. Beat Jacare. And then Kelvin Gastelum, man. I remember I bet him to beat Rob Whittaker for the title, but, we know what happened with that. Rob Whittaker, got injured there. But then, Kelvin's one of the best middleweights his last fight. I actually bet Till at big dog odds. It was just that, Kelvin, after that Izzy fight, you could see him, getting in a place of comfort. It's a fight that he lost, but everyone's telling him, oh, good job, you look good, this and that, and which he did. Those are all good things. But then, the weight miss thing. So, but I feel like, man, this version of Kelvin Gastelum, I've been seeing him on IG training with these guys like Vittori and Chikadze. These guys they've been getting their work in during this quarantine time. And Jack Hermanson, I think that he's a legit top 10 guy. It's just that even back in the day, I had suspicions that, okay, well, the higher he goes up in competition, is it always going to be this, all we need is one takedown and that's going to be it? Because these guys at the top of the weight class, man, these guys are just on a different level. You can't do that with guys like Jared Cannonier. I know Cannonier's ground game might not be the best, but if you give him, you get a guy who's been finishing guys in the first round with one sub and dominating them with the ground and pound, you give these guys 3 months to prepare for that, and they'll shut that down. So, and I don't know if Jack Hermanson believes in his stand-up enough to stand up with these guys like Cannonier and Gastelum and Whittaker, et cetera. I think that he's so, used to getting that ground and pound and finishing guys. Look at the fights that he's had to strike in, when he had to fight Maheda back in the day. We remember what happened in that fight. He couldn't stand toe-to-toe with him, and that was the same thing as last fight. And Kelvin, we know at times when he does let that left hand go that he will put guys down. I remember his knockdown rate at one point in time was 100%. I know it's not anymore, but he has knocked down a lot of guys at middleweight. And I actually think this is a good fight for Kelvin. I think that as long as he clears Jack's takedowns early, his clinch game, and even if he does get taken down, if he survives that first round, I feel like Jack Hermanson's just the type of guy that, if he takes a big shot on the nose or on the chin in that second and third round, I feel like he's going to get dropped and he's not going to be able to recover. So I'm going to actually take Kelvin Gastelum to get like a third round TKO. And, it's going to be a good fight. But, I wouldn't be shocked if Jack got the first round submission, but I just think Kelvin has more of a window to win and is the better overall fighter.
Yeah, it's a hell of a fight, man. And, I feel your points. It's one of those things where we know that Kelvin's been taken down before. We know Weidman took him down. We know back in the day he's been taken down. Look, he's one of the smaller guys at 185. So there's a chance that when they clinch up that Jack might throw him around a little bit. It's just that Kelvin's one of these guys that's tough as nails, and he can take that early adversity and come back. You look at a fight like him and Tim Kennedy, and Tim Kennedy basically did in that first round what Jack's going to try to do here, which is body lock him, get him up against the fence, rough him up, take him down. And look, there is definitely a chance that Jack comes out here and takes him down and smashes him. It's just that if Kelvin can survive that and get this to the second and third round, man, it's gonna be a long night for Jack, because one thing about Jack is I feel like he's too smart for his own good. Man, the guy's got a super high IQ. He's really intelligent, and that's cool and all for game plans. That's perfect. He comes up with some great game plans. It's just that the reason it's not that good is that when a fight gets tough, he kind of thinks too much. He kind of psychs himself out a little bit. So I think Jack is a little bit too smart for his own good sometimes. And, you know, people will say, well, what about the Talis latest fight? He overcame adversity there. And it's like, yeah, but that was a grappling-based fight. He does great in grappling-based fights. It's not like he overcame adversity from a knockdown in that fight. That's not what happened. I don't think Jack is the kind to, you know, if Jack gets knocked down one time, I don't see him coming back to win the fight is what I'm kind of trying to say here, Shaq. So I feel like the kind of adversity Jack can overcome is grappling-based adversity. And I don't really think Kelvin's going to come out here trying to shoot on a guy like Jack. I think that Kelvin's going to try to light him up. And I know that Kelvin had a bit of a lackluster fight against Darren Till, but when you put it in perspective, man, it's like he had the fight of the year against the champion, Izzy Adesanya. He's 28 years old. We know that sometimes Kelvin likes to, you know, chief up on some blunts, eat some pizza, miss weight a couple times. Look, he's not always going to show up as motivated, and you already know coming off a title loss, when you made the most money you've ever made, you were this close to accomplishing your dream. We know it can be hard to get up for the next one, and you saw in his last fight against Darren Till, you know, barely made weight and all this stuff. It was a lackluster performance. I feel like Kelvin does his best when everyone's counting him out, and right now everyone's counting him out, and I feel like he's going to come out here hungry, not hungry for the buffet, Shaq, hungry for the victory, you know what I mean? And I think he's going to come out here and, look, he's just got to weather this early, you know, wrestling storm by Hermansson. I know Hermansson comes out with that great movement. The kicks are hard as hell. His body lock, his boot sweep, his guillotine, everything. I like Jack Hermansson a lot, and I think he might have some early success. But all I am saying is that if this fight hits round 2 or round 3, and Kelvin starts getting off on some shots on the feet, I think he's going to light Hermansson up, and I think he might break him. So I'm actually going to go with Kelvin Gastelum to snap the 2-fight skid and get back on track. Main event of the evening for the vacant flyweight title. We got the uncrowned champ, Deiveson Figueiredo. He's 18-1, and Joseph Benavidez is 28-6. Currently, they got Deiveson Figueiredo minus 215. The comeback on Joseph Benavidez is plus 178. Well, I mean, Shaq, we saw this fight go down once, and I just want to say this, man. It's kind of scary when, like, you see fights a certain way, and it doesn't even matter because all 3 judges view it completely differently. Like, for example, like it's just kind of concerning. It's like all 3 judges score that first round for Joseph Benavidez, which, like, on the night I watched the fight live, last night when I watched the fight again, this morning when I rewatched it, I always score that first round for Deiveson. So that's really concerning to me. It's like maybe what I value in a fight is different than what the judges do, because you look at the 3 areas that you can fight: the stand-up, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu. In the stand-up, yes, on paper, Joseph might have landed a couple more strikes, but, I mean, it's pretty damn clear that Deiveson landed the more impactful, the harder shots, no doubt about it. And it's funny. It kind of reminds me of, you know, their stand-up exchanges kind of reminds me of this quote Conor McGregor said back in the day, back when he was at 145. He used to say, you know, the featherweights, they hit like flyweights, so it's nice down here. And, you know, that's kind of how I viewed the stand-up exchanges between Deiveson and Joseph. You know, Deiveson, he'd eat any shot Joseph threw at him, no problem. Like, oh, this is all this guy's got. And then when it was Deiveson's turn to land the offense, I mean, you saw him back up Benavidez. You saw him impact him. You saw him knock him out. As far as the wrestling, whenever Joseph would shoot on a takedown, it would be easily sprawled. Whenever Deiveson shot on a takedown, he picked up Benavidez and slammed him. The jiu-jitsu, I mean, you saw that armbar attempt by Deiveson Figueiredo, and it wasn't just, oh, you rolled for a little armbar, you pull your arm out, we're good to go. No, I mean, this was some serious shit. That was clamped in. That was dangerous. That was scary. And Joseph Benavidez had to resort to the hitchhiker escape, which is some real jiu-jitsu to get out that armbar, man. So I feel like Deiveson won every area of the fight, the stand-up, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu. Second round goes out there, knocks him out. So I don't understand how all 3 judges score that first round for Joseph. And another thing, you know, we can talk about this headbutt, but, like, the same way I don't make excuses for Alex Perez getting headbutted by Joseph Benavidez, I'm not going to make excuses for Joseph Benavidez getting headbutted in this fight. And also, let me say this. It was Joseph's fault that he got headbutted because Joseph likes to charge in head first. So, I mean, like, they both clashed heads. It's not Deiveson's fault that Joseph was impacted by it. But look, You guys know how I feel about rematches. The guy that won the first time wins the second time the majority of the time, especially in these title fights. And Joseph Benavidez doesn't seem like, not that he's not a big game player, because he's been a top 5 guy his entire career. I would not discredit him like that. But, you remember what Dana White used to say about Kenny Florian in title fights? He chokes in title fights, and it is what it is, man. So I got Deiveson Figueiredo to finish Joseph Benavidez again.
Yeah, this fight, I'm a big Figueiredo fan, have been from the start. Back when I saw him fight my boy Dennis Fontes back in jungle fights, I was like, damn, this guy is gonna be a fucking problem, But I think that I feel like this is sad because I like Joe. Who doesn't like Joe? We all like Joe, and pretty much the big notion is, I know a lot of people want to see Joe win and, want him to finally get this belt. But, when I'm hearing some of these interviews, it's like, I almost feel like it's one of these cases of, we might have a delusional guy, man. I feel like, a lot of people need to know that there's a big difference between a headbutt and a head clash. Joe, you charge in head first, you were lunging, overextending way in, your head clash. Figueiredo fights with his hands down. I mean, a head clash is bound to happen when you're fighting Figueiredo. I mean, the guy fights with his face, right in front of you, man. So I think that he's delusional on that talk. I feel like, after that headbutt, you got knocked out, but this is an MMA fight, bro. This is, especially against Figueiredo. This ain't even an MMA fight when you fight Figueiredo no more, bro. This is a street fight, This is a fight for your life. Like, Figueiredo, I don't know, you remember what he did to John Moraga back in the day? John Moraga was in a pool of his own blood, and he couldn't even stand up. Look what he did to Pantoja, bro. I mean, Pantoja was out there getting mollywopped for, brief periods of time. So I feel like Benavidez is in over his head, to be honest. And I like Joe, and I feel like he's a great fighter. I think that now you're going to see Figueiredo. I have a feeling he's going to make the weight. We'll see. But I know he did have to cut an extra 2 pounds, but it's not about this weight cut. It's like, guys, when he reloads and when he wakes up in the morning and he feels, and he's gained like 30 pounds back, and now he feels really healthy, and now, he's turned into the God of War. I don't think Joseph Benavidez can handle it. I just don't think his chin. That first fight, he looked real slow. Like I told you, initially I was like, bro, I thought Deiveson almost broke his arm in the first round, and had that nice arm bar, and yeah, he definitely cracked Deiveson, but those shots don't affect. Deiveson fought Pantoja the same way, told him to keep hitting him. Those shots don't affect them. I see this ending in brutal knockout as well. I feel like Joseph, it's almost one of those things where the fans and, all the people behind the scenes that work for the UFC, it's like one of those things where they've like, when Cejudo left, it's like everyone put in his head that like, oh, you're going to be the champion now, as if like, this is a foregone conclusion. Like, oh, Joe, you're going to finally get your belt. Like, oh, for sure. Like, bro, like Deiveson Figueiredo doesn't exist. Like, these other guys don't exist. And then, like, coming into this one, it's like a similar thing. Everyone's like, oh, the headbutt changed the fight. If it wasn't for the headbutt, Joe was winning. Like, if it wasn't for the headbutt, Joe was doing this and he was doing that, and I see it differently. I see Deiveson, defending his uncrowned belt, but finally getting his real belt. And I think Waleed Ismail is going to be, finally get himself a UFC champion, and they're going to be celebrating in the jungle in Brazil.
Man, it's going to be a hell of a matchup. Before we talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch, and while we both agree that Deiveson probably makes weight, he probably goes out there and fights Joe B. Real quick, let's talk about the possible replacement. Let's talk about what would happen if Pantoja fought Joseph Benavidez for the title. I personally got Pantoja there. If he's an underdog, I'll be betting Pantoja at underdog odds. It's one of those situations where I actually think the fight would be a little bit closer, But Joseph Benavidez puts too much pressure on himself in title fights, man. He doesn't perform his best. You could see his anxiety just in the walkout in the fight introductions last time. And I feel like Pantoja would be in a situation where he's got nothing to lose. I think he's got the better chin, and I think that he could walk Benavidez down and turn it into a violent fight and eventually get him out of there late or edge a decision. So if they happen to fight, I got Pantoja.
Yeah, I got Pantoja as well. Definitely be a closer fight, a tougher fight for him in comparison to Figueiredo. But, like you said, I feel like it's almost like they're like people coddle Joe into this belief that this belt, is his or should be his. Like he doesn't have to go out there and earn it. And it kind of disturbs me. But, I get it, man. He's a nice guy. He's a great guy. It's just you got to fight for these things, man. It's one thing to say, he got headbutted, but it's like it's so far from a head. Like a headbutt is like, I can't think of an example. It's like that's not a headbutt. Like he's over lunging, he's sloppy, that's his fault. Like, in the head clash. But hey, we'll see what happens on Saturday. Yeah, and I got Pantoja. I feel like Pantoja would probably get to him in the late rounds and really hurt him with punches. And I know Pantoja would love to beat up his former opposing tough coach. That would be a great feat. Beat Moreno, beat Joe, beat a bunch of other guys, so Kai Kara. So, I know Pantoja would love to do that.
Well, Shaq, now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC on ESPN Plus 30?
My fight to watch is going to be Marc Diakiese versus Fiziev, man. I feel like Marc Diakiese, if he gets this win, I feel like he deserves a big fight, man. I feel like that would have been like, a complete recovery. I mean, a lot of people thought this guy was completely done. And if he can beat a top rising, tough prospect like Fiziev, who a lot of people have got their eyes on, I feel like that'll be a big statement, especially if he can get a finish. And then Fiziev gets the win. Man, he's about to be a big star, especially if he knocks the Casey out or something or dominates him, then I could see him being like a real staple on that, Russian Kazakhstani scene. So, I'm excited for that fight.
Yeah, for me, my fight to watch is going to be Montel Jackson versus Brett Johns. I mean, like I told y'all, this reminds me of a bantamweight version of John Jones versus Ryan Bader, a true prospect showdown. The winner is going to really catapult themselves to that top 15, to a potential title shot down the line. If they keep winning all these fights, and these two are so damn talented in every area of the game, this is truly a fight to watch. So for me, Brett Johns versus Montel Jackson is my fight to watch. Well, Shaq, who is your fighter to watch for UFC Fight Island?
My fighter.
Real quick. Deiveson made weight.
What, 125?
125 on the dot.
My boy's about to get his belt finally, once and for all. But I think my fighter to watch is Kelvin Gastelum, bro. He needs this win badly, and it would be a shame if Kelvin lost this fight. I feel like he'd go down as one of the fighters that I know he was the last pick on Tough, but kind of didn't live up to his potential, man. Because I know that at one point in time, a lot of people did believe he was on this mission for gold, but man, he needs this win bad. I feel like he needs a knockout win to really stay in this middleweight race. I think this is the most important fight of his career because, man, you don't want to take 3 L's, especially with the guys coming up at middleweight these days. You don't want to turn into the guy that all the prospects fight. So, I feel like Kelvin Gastelum, it would be sad to see him, after that great Izzy fight and, the career that he's had so far, take 3 L's. So he needs this win. He's my fighter to watch.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be an unbelievable fight for so many different reasons. For me, my fighter to watch is Alexandre Pantoja, man. I mean, this is a guy who is obviously one of the most exciting flyweights on planet Earth. He's a top 5 guy. He's in line for a title shot, to get the winner of Deiveson versus Joseph. And I'm very curious about his psychology because all week it was a thing where it's like, hey, you might actually get a title shot Saturday, but you also got to focus on the very, very tough Askarov. And for a lot of guys, that whole thing of not knowing who you're fighting might fuck with them. But Pantoja doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. He's had, over He's had over 25 pro fights. He's been there. He's done that. He's a true warrior. So I'm curious to see how he performs here. He's going to come out here, take a lot of risks against a guy like Askar. Askarov, or is he kind of try to play it safe because he knows a title shot is, waiting afterwards. So I'm really curious to see Pantoja's approach here. And for that reason, he is my fighter to watch. Well, Shaq, we did it. It's going down Saturday night in Fight Island. Deiveson Figueiredo versus Joseph Benavidez for the vacant flyweight title. Deiveson made weight, so it is official now, my friend. Man, I cannot wait. They can follow you at MMA Genius 05. They can follow me at Best Fight Picks. Hit us up at bestfightpicks.com. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify. All the places where we are available. We'll be back next week for the Robert Whittaker versus Darren Till card. Going to be a lot of exciting times ahead. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.